Hello book lovers, it's Anna, and April just came to a close, which means it's time for me to talk to you guys about the books I read this month. I started off this month with reading The Elegance of the Hedgehog by Muriel Barbery. This story is told from two point of views, the first being an 11-year-old genius girl called Paloma, and the second being a 54-year-old concierge called Renee. This book was originally written in French as well as it's set in Paris, and it was translated last year into English by Alison Anderson. Since then, it has been a New York Times bestseller, and I can see why. I absolutely adored this book. While Paloma wants to commit suicide because she feels that she's part of a society that all it wants to do is consume more and more, Renee has been her entire life underestimated by the people around her because she comes from a very poor family and she didn't get any higher education than the very basic one she was able to afford, and so people always assume she's this bad old concierge lady that doesn't know anything about the world. Both being very, very wrong. Well, Paloma, sure, she wants to commit suicide, but she has decided that she's going to start this kind of journal, and through this journal she's going to try to find something worth living for. She says that if she'll be able to find at least one thing that's worth living for, then she will not commit suicide. But if she doesn't, then she's going to commit suicide by burning down the apartment that she and her family lives in, which is in this kind of like hotel building, and thus she'll be able to free her family from the consuming society that they're a part of because they'll lose everything. And Renee is the concierge that works at the kind of hotel that Paloma lives in, and she is trying to play this dumb, stupid old lady that the society thinks that she is, though secretly she is quite educated, and that's not because she has been studying behind anybody's back, but because she reads. The thread that's linking both of those characters, besides that they both live in the same building, is that they're both obsessed with Japanese culture. The story starts out with the death of one of the people that live in that same building that they both live in. Apparently this is a companion novel. So in her other novel called Gourmet Rhapsody, it tells the story of that one man who is about to die. He finds that he has one day left to live, and he's a food critic, so he sets out to find his last gourmet meal. So after he dies, he leaves an empty apartment in the building, and then a certain character moves in. I personally, as I said before, adored this book. I felt like it had magnificent writing. It was very precise. I felt like before writing a certain passage that the author really thought about each and every word that he or she, I'm not sure, used. This story is very character driven. It's not that we get a certain narrative that's telling us the sequence of events. It's just us reading their inner thoughts and them trying to figure out who they are, where they want to head to, and what are their goals in life. And I feel like this is super character driven, but at the same time, it's just that type of book. Like, the plot itself is super simplistic. I can count on one hand all the major events that happen. It's extremely slow. So do not go into this book expecting like this action-packed book, because that's not what it's about. It's a very character-driven, very thought-provoking book that comes to question the way that we judge a person based on what the society says he or she should be like. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I was actually on vacation and I didn't have any physical books with me once I finished The Elegance of the Hedgehog. So I opened up my Kindle and I decided to read a book that I bought a month ago. Was it 2 months ago? And that was A Girl on Wire by Gwenda Bond. This is a kind of Romeo and Juliet retelling in a circus setting. It follows Jules, and Jules comes from a family of circus performers, and they do the wire act as well as the horse act. She runs away in order for her family to come along to search for her, and then that they'll be able to perform in this huge circus that is going out on a tour that they were invited to, but they very politely declined because the Garcias are doing the trapeze act at that same circus, and there's a family feud between the two. Obviously, it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling. What I did like about this book was that at the beginning, I felt like Jules was a very well-developed, strong female character. The story itself was very true to the actual Romeo and Juliet play, and so I really enjoyed that aspect, as well as the fact that there was like this play on circus superstitions, which was quite interesting. This book was kind of like a train wreck. It started alright, and then it just went downhill really fast, and boom, like, I mean, it started out pretty strong, but the plot progressed. I felt like it became super cliche. About halfway, Gwenda drifted off from the Romeo and Juliet original play plot, and then she tried to make it her own, which just made it super cliche, super predictable. Felt like it was done in a very, well, bad way. There's no other way to say it. I did not enjoy any of the characters. The only one that I actually liked ended up dying throughout the book. I made an entire video talking about insta-love in this book in particular and my thoughts on insta-love in the YA genre as a whole, and I'll link that down below if you're interested. It's my Let's Talk April #1 if I'm not mistaken. I also didn't like the ending. I felt like it was super convenient for the characters, and because of all of the things I didn't like, I ended up giving this 2.8 out of 5 stars. After that, I just wanted something that's like angsty, teenagey, just filled with like romance, and then I remembered that I wanted to buy White Hot Kiss and Stone Cold Touch by Jennifer Armentrout, so I ended up buying that on my Kindle. I read those 2 books. If you do not know, this book follows Layla. Layla is half demon, half warden. Now, warden are kind of like fallen angels, but like gargoyle style. It's kind of like in the I, Frankenstein movie, and she is trying to fight her demon side that just wants to devour souls by using her ability of seeing souls to track down demons and tagging them so that her warden clan can go out at night and finish those demons off. In this world, humans know that wardens exist, but they do not know that hell and demons do. And we start off with Layla just having lunch with 2 of her friends when suddenly she sees this demon, so she decides to go after him. And then he says some crazy stuff to her, and this demon comes out of nowhere and saves her. And from that point on, apparently, half of the magical creatures out there want her dead, the other half want to just kidnap her. She sets out on this really crazy adventure, and she's trying at the same time to come to terms with who she is and battle her demon side. This is a Jennifer L. Armentrout book, so obviously we have a love triangle. So the first book, White Hot Kiss, centers around her and the demon love interest, while the second one centers around her and her warden love interest. I actually quite enjoyed the first book, and I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I felt like that in the first book there was a pretty great balance between the actual plot and like the mystery that was going on, and with the romance. I thought it was a very 50-50 kind of balance. I really enjoyed that, and I really liked the love interest in this book because Roth, his name is Roth, kept reminding me of Julian from The Forbidden Game, who is one of my favorite paranormal characters out there. I also really enjoyed Layla as a character. I felt like she was very relatable, she was very genuine, and she had some really fun moments. She was very realistic, and I really enjoyed that. And that's why I gave the first book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I then moved on to read the second book, which sadly I did not enjoy as much, and that book is Stone Cold Touch. I gave that book 3.8 out of 4 stars. The first thing that I didn't really like about this book is that I felt like the balance of like the 50% plot, 50% romance wasn't kept in the second book, and instead the first 80% of the book was just the romance. And even though I felt like the things that were going on with the actual plot were so much more severe for our main character Layla, and I was like, girl, it doesn't matter who you're in love with and who loves you right now, try saving yourself, everybody wants you dead. But she didn't do that. And I also felt like the main plot twist at the end of the book was very predictable. Like, I felt like Jennifer L. Armentrout didn't give clues along the way. She gave a big neon sign just pointing at the plot twist. Even though the balance wasn't kept that well, I still think that the last 20% of the book, which was much more plot-based, was fantastic. But what I mainly didn't like in this book is that I felt like both of the male love interests weren't treating Layla as they should. But at the same time, this is a paranormal romance by Jennifer Armentrout, so I cannot expect one of the love interests to be, you know what, I love her, and if I love her I should let her go and then just disappear, because I mean, this is a paranormal romance. After that, I decided that it's finally time for me to dive back into the Mistborn world and finish off the series with the Hero of Ages. I was expecting this big grand finale by Brandon Sanderson, and I have to say that for most of this book I was disappointed. I felt like the first 30% of the book was utterly boring. I did not enjoy any of the chapters. The only thing that I did like was the kind of like text or like study text that we got at the beginning of each chapter that explained to the reader a little bit about the world and the religions and the magic systems in this world that Brandon Sanderson has created. I also enjoyed the Candle's point of view. I felt like when we hit that 30% mark up until the 70% mark of this book, things got a little bit better, but still I didn't feel like it was that interesting. I was expecting so much more from Brandon Sanderson. At least though, Vin started to grow on me as a character, and I really didn't like her in the first two books, so that was nice. Once we hit that 70% mark, that was when Brandon Sanderson delivered that ending that I was so looking forward to. I loved those parts of the book. I felt like they were super high-paced. Everything tied together in such a magnificent way. I felt like Brandon Sanderson wasn't afraid to cross those red lines that usually most authors do not cross because they do not want to upset their fans in some way. And I really like that he crossed all of those kind of like lines. I mean, I'm trying not to spoil the book for you, but you already read this book, then you know some of the major stuff that happens in the ending of this book. I felt like the ending was very unique, and even though I still predicted some of the things that were going to happen somewhere around the halfway point of the book, I was still surprised with the way that they came to be. Give this book 4 out of 5 stars. The last book I read this month was The Night of the Solidus by L.J. Smith. If you do not know, L.J. Smith is one of my favorite authors out there, and this is actually her first book ever published. It was published back in 1987. I ended up giving this 1 out of 5 stars. I am quite shocked that somebody published this book. This felt like an okay first draft of a story with lots of potential. Everything needed so much more work. Thank you for watching this video. I would love to know, what did you read this month? Did you read any of the books that I talked about? And if you did, what were your opinions? I'll have another video up for you guys soon, so I will see you then, and goodbye!